Little Johnny gets in trouble for standing up in class, pulling his pants down and going, "Little fishy, little fishy, little fishy." Teacher says, "Little Johnny, go to the principal's office." He goes to the principal's office. He says, "What'd you do this time, little Johnny?" He pulls his pants down again. He goes, "Little fishy, little fishy, little fishy." She says, "I'm calling your mother." Mom comes and picks him up. Says, "Little Johnny, I told you to stop doing that. Wait till your dad gets home." So his dad gets home. He says, "Little Johnny, what'd you do?" He says, "Nothing. I pulled my pants down. I went, little fishy, little fishy, little fishy." His dad says, "Oh yeah?" He pulls his pants down and he goes, "Big whale, big whale." Little Johnny was 3 years old and he was looking out his window and he saw this pregnant lady out there. He went running out there and he says, "Excuse me, can you tell me why your belly's so big?" Well, she looked down and she rubbed her belly and she said, "There's a baby in there." He said, "There's a baby in there?" She said, "Yeah." He says, "Was he a good baby?" She says, "Oh yes, he's a very good baby." So he says, "Well, if he's a good baby, well then why'd you eat him?" Little Johnny was told by one of his friends that all parents have a deep, dark secret. And all you have to do is walk up to them and say, "I know the truth." And they'll give you some money. So little Johnny decides to try out this theory, and he goes home and he goes to his mom. He says, "Mom, I know the truth." And she says, "Oh, be quiet." She goes, here's $20. Don't tell your dad." So I say, "Okay." So his dad comes home and he says, "Dad, I know the truth." His dad says, "Be quiet. Here's $50. Don't tell your mom." Johnny is like, "All right, this is good." So the next day he decides to try it out on the mailman. And he looks at the mailman and he says, "Hey, I know the truth." The mailman drops his bags and he says, "Oh, little Johnny, come give your dad a hug." So one night after work, little Johnny and his buddy Tony went to the local bar. Little Johnny had his head down and Tony said, "What's wrong?" He said, "You remember that girl from work that was gorgeous, and every time I'd go and try and talk to her, I'd get a boner and have to run away?" He says, "Yeah." Johnny says, "Well, I finally got the nerve to ask her out." He says, "Well, what'd you do about the boner thing?" He says, "Well, I went home and got some duct tape and I taped it to my leg." He says, "Okay, yeah, that worked." He says, "And then I went over to her house. She opened the door and she looked amazing. Just beautiful, dressed to the nines." He says, well, then what happened? Why are you so upset?" He says, "I kicked her in the face." Little Johnny went to the dentist because he had to have a tooth pulled, and the dentist pulls out a needle and says, "I'm going to give you a shot of Novocaine." And little Johnny says, No, not needles. I hate needles. I can't have needles." The doctor says, "Okay, well, all right, I'll put this mask on you for some laughing gas." Well, Johnny says, No, not the mask. I feel like I'm going to suffocate." Then it says, "Okay, well, how are you with pills?" Well, Johnny says, "Pills are fine." He says, "All right, well, I'll give you this Viagra." Little Johnny says, "Okay, but I didn't know that Viagra helps with pain." Then it says, "It doesn't. But it's going to give you something to hold on to when I rip out this tooth." Well, I didn't even know about this, but last night we were talking and he says, "You know, when I was 16 and I had my first job, I had 500 people under me." I was like, "What the heck?" I said, "Did you work for some big corporation?" He said, "Hell no, I was 16 years old. I had a job mowing lawns at the cemetery." Little Johnny and little Susie are in human anatomy class, and after the hour ends, little Susie comes up and says, "Little Johnny, I don't know what a penis is." He says, "Yeah, I'm not sure either." He said, "But I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to ask my older brother." Little Johnny goes and asks his older brother, and he says, "I'm not only going to tell you, I'm going to show you." And he goes over and he pulls his pants down. He says, "You see that? Now that's a perfect penis." Little Johnny says, "Okay." Next day he goes to school. He says, "All right, little Susie, after school, I'm going to show you." So she comes out and he pulls his pants down and he says, "Do you see that? Now that's a penis. And if it were 3 inches shorter, it'd be a perfect penis." There were 2 guys and little Johnny sitting in the sauna, and all of a sudden you heard a beeping going off. Well, the first guy, he lifts up his forearm and pushes a button. He says, "Oh, that was my pager." Johnny looks at it and says, "Oh, that's kind of crazy." Well, then all of a sudden you hear another sound like a phone ringing. And the second guy picks up the palm of his hand and holds it up to his ear, and he starts talking, and then all of a sudden he puts his hand back down. He says, "Sorry, that was my phone." Well, Johnny thinks, "Oh my gosh, their technology is out of this world." So he's saying, "I got to think of something so I won't be outdone." So Johnny says, "Excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom." So he gets out, comes back a couple minutes later, and he's got a piece of toilet paper stuck between his butt cheeks. He goes, "Oh, look at that! Somebody must be sending me a fax." Little Johnny's dad wasn't feeling so well, and so little Johnny took him down to the doctor. Doctor ran some tests, and he comes back. He says, "I'm sorry, sir, but your body is full of cancer, and you don't have much time left." Puts his head down. He says, "I kind of figured it was that." He says, "Since I don't have much time left, little Johnny, you mind taking me down to the bar so I could have a drink with my friends one last time?" So they go there, and they're having their drink, and little Johnny's dad says, "I'm sorry, boys, this is probably going to be my last time here. See, the doctor told me I have AIDS and I'm going to die." So they finished up their drink and they left, and little Johnny says, "Why did you tell your friends you have AIDS? You know the doctor said you have cancer." He says, "Yeah, I told them that so that they don't try and screw your mother after I die." Says, "Little Johnny, I got a riddle for you. What goes up and never comes down?" Little Johnny says, "That's easy. That's a bubble. Bubbles go up and they pop and they can't come back down." Teacher says, "Well, the correct answer is your age, but I like the way you're thinking." Little Johnny says, "All right, teacher, I got one for you. Some people like to be on the top. Some people like to be on the bottom. And it always involves a bed." Teacher says, "Little Johnny, you go to the principal's office." He says, "What for?" "I'm a bunk bed. But I like the way you're thinking." So little Johnny was 21. He was at a bar and he meets a girl, and they get to talking, and pretty soon they end up heading to her place. Well, as they're taking off their clothes, he pulls off his pants, and she notices that his knees are just terrible looking. He says, "Yeah, I contracted the measles when I was younger." She says, "You mean the measles?" He says, "No, I meant the measles." She didn't think anything of it, and then he takes off his socks, and she sees his just nasty toes. And he says, "Oh yeah, when I was younger I contracted polio." She says, "You mean polio?" He says, "No, I mean polio." So she doesn't want to fight because she's feeling kind of horny, and so everything's going well until he pulls off his boxers, and she says, "Oh no, let me guess, small cocks." Little Johnny's 21 years old, and he hasn't had a whole lot of luck with the ladies, so he tries, to go see one of the women of the night. He walks up to her and he says, "How much?" She says, $10 on the grass, $30 in the sofa, and $50 in the bed. He said, "Well, I'll pay you 50. She says, "Oh my gosh, you're a man of class." He said, "Man of class my ass, I want it 5 times on the grass." Teacher says, "Okay, class, today I want you to tell me words that end in TOR that eat something." Little Susie raises her hand. She says, "Alligator." Teacher says, "That's great, little Susie, and alligators eat a lot of things." Little Billy raises his hand and he says, "Predator." Teacher says, "Yes, predators also ends in TOR, and they eat all kinds of stuff." Well, little Johnny raises his hand. He says, "Vibrator." Teacher says, "You're right. Vibrator ends in TOR, but it doesn't eat anything." Well, Johnny says, oh, ma'am, you're wrong. My mom's always screaming about how her vibrator just eats up all the batteries. A long time ago, there was this 21-year-old girl that didn't have a place to live, so she was taken in by this older married couple. One night, she asked if she could take a bath, and the lady says, well, we don't have a bath, but I do have a tin wash bin that you can use on Monday nights when my husband goes to play darts. She said, okay, that'd be great. So that Monday night, she filled up the wash bin with water and took off her clothes, and the lady noticed she didn't have any hair down below. So that night she told her husband about it. He says, I don't believe you. She says, all right, next Monday I'll leave the blinds open a little bit so you can see for yourself. So the next Monday, the husband leaves for darts and the lady gets the wash bin ready again. And as she takes off her clothes, she still notices there's no hair down below. She says, do you shave? She says, no, I don't. I've just never had any hair down there. She says, do you? And she goes, oh, I have lots of hair. She says, see? And she lifts up her nightgown. Later on, the husband comes home and says, wow, you were right, but you didn't have to show her yours. She goes, why? You've seen it many times. He goes, yeah, but the fucking dart team hasn't.